Hi, my name's Seymour and I'm a lecturer in the School of Design at the University of Technology, Sydney. On the leafy suburban outskirts of Sydney sits the heritage-listed Rose Seidler House. Designed in the late 1940s for his parents by arguably Australia's greatest modernist architect, Harry Seidler, the house has all the hallmarks of an international-style machine for living. White freestanding planes raised on pilotis sheltering the driveway and entrance below. But perhaps the house's most striking feature is not architectural, but its collection of domestic appliances. What now seem quotidian, fridge, dishwasher, waste disposal unit were unheard of luxuries at the time, and it's claimed that the fit out of the kitchen costs more than the rest of the house combined. The idea of convenience it promises is one of a life quarantined from the Sisyphean drudgery of domestic chores. This is one version of convenience, the reduction of difficult and unnecessary labour. However, in the more than half century since the house was built, convenience has shifted from the physical to the cognitive realm. Digital technologies have refigured our social, domestic and work lives, transforming many activities that were once solidly corporeal into mental action. Contemporary convenience strives not only to reduce the burden of such actions, but to banish them altogether and withdraw such experiences from conscious awareness. Convenience has come to be quantified not just as an absence of toil, but as frictionless interaction. This paper argues that this version of convenience is antithetical to human experiencing in its fullest sense, what Dewey called heightened vitality, an active and alert commerce with the world. As digital technologies move from the interior space of the screen to increasingly supplement our physical environments, and as more of our social, domestic and work lives are engineered by such technologies, it's incumbent on designers to take stock of the kinds of experiences and interactions such technologies afford. Dewey posited aesthetic experiences non-dualistic, residing not in human-made artifacts, but emerging from the interpenetration of self and the world of objects and events. In such a reckoning, the objects that populate our lives are not passive receptacles that compliantly yield to our demands, but rather the co-authors of our human life world. As we strive to make interactions ever smoother and more effortless, ever more convenient, it's worth pausing to ask what may be lost in such transactions. Just as the reconfiguration of the built world around principles of ease has led to obesogenic environments that fuel rising levels of global obesity, mental convenience and its culture of automized and habitual patterns of interaction posit challenges to our mental well-being. This paper begins with an overview of design's relation to convenience, before examining how principles of frictionlessness and non-intrusion have come to dominate the design of technological objects. It outlines key arguments that challenge the logic that efficiency should be the key driver of interaction design, and offers an additional critique that if we are to concern ourselves with the design of experience, then we need to consider not just the outcomes of interactions, but the quality of mind they encourage. To do this, this paper draws on Buddhist understandings of mindfulness experience and shows how thoughtless interaction is directly opposed to such mindful presence. Notions of convenience have reverberated through definitions of design since Vitruvius set out his principles of architecture as strength, utility, and beauty, forever intertwining use and aesthetics. Modernism's Functionalist Agenda further entrenched the belief that things are designed best when designed for clarity of purpose and ease of use. Universalism, standardization, and rational order became the leitmotifs of modern design, and Sullivan's form forever follows function, Luce's ornament is crime, and Corbusier's ascetic vision of an engineered world imbued utility with a particularly moral turn. But it was Taylor in his rigorous systemizing of human labour that most forcefully linked convenience with capitalism's propulsive drive towards efficiency. His assigning of machinic impulses to human action shifted convenient and efficient operation from a characteristic of objects to one of humans. Throughout the 20th century, this version of convenience became central to the application of human capital and migrated from the sphere of work to colonize post-war modes of living. Activities and interactions whose focus had once been social and cultural, in other words, richly experiential, cooking, shopping, socializing, entertainment, came to be dominated by ideas of efficient tasking, fast food, drive-through culture, vending machines, online shopping. In design, this concern with efficiency and utility revealed itself in multiple domains: the international typographic style's preoccupation with legibility, the ISO standardization project, Henry Dreyfus's seminal Designing for People, and the rise of human factors and ergonomics research. But it is in the field of HCI and ubiquitous computing that contemporary ideas of convenient interactions have been most forcefully promulgated. In his pioneering article, The Computer in the 21st Century, Mark Weiser put forward a vision of the modern computer seamlessly and invisibly integrated into the fabric of daily life. Weiser articulated a vision of distributed computing enabled by tabs, small electronic components that make smart the multifarious objects that populate our domestic, work, and social environments. Railing against the arcane complexity of the personal computer, Weiser envisaged a time when, rather than us needing to bend ourselves to the requirements of technology, computing power and its informational affordances would imperceptibly fold itself around us. Weiser invoked Heidegger's ready-to-hand as an ideal of technological function. A good tool is an invisible tool, a tool that does not intrude on your consciousness, and notably introduced seamlessness into the conceptual vocabulary of electronic device design. Smart objects would integrate with each other and our needs so smoothly that the operation would allow them to weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. In many ways, Weiser's vision came to pass. Rather than spatially distributed, the smartphone has seen a unification of functions into a single device. But the Internet of Things has once again foregrounded utopian visions of a world populated with intelligent objects. Perhaps the real lasting legacy of Weiser's vision, however, is his language of seamlessness, invisibility, and non-intrusion. As our interactions with technological devices spread out into multiple facets of life, it seems more vital than ever to take into account the nature of our interactions and the kinds of experiences they ease us towards. Convenience and its principles of usability, efficiency, and frictionlessness have come to be, at least in practice, largely unquestioned objective of the way we interact with much of the material world. While on the surface these qualities might seem to be self-evidently good, invoking here Heidegger's hammer as the paragon of the tool in thoughtless use, these kinds of interactions contort us towards technology's needs as much as the clunky operating systems of Weiser's time, just in far more subtle and potentially pernicious ways. The engineering origins of computing, the methods employed in the design and evaluation of electronic devices, and the dominance of narratives around productivity and progress within technological discourses have all contributed to the prominence of efficiency and usability as the goals that user interaction should strive for. Despite its name, the personal computer established itself first within the domain of work, and it is the concerns of the workplace, utility, productivity, task orientation that have come to be considered the primary criteria for human-technology interactions. This elevating of usability also owes something to software engineering's origins in the fields such as ubiquitous computing and user experience design. Overbeek et al. Argue that research and development in these fields has tended to emphasize cognitive and rational forms of interaction, as these are more easily abstracted into the logical operations of code. This can be seen quite visibly in the linear and branching diagramming methods that are so central to UX design processes, and that by their nature minimize opportunities for ambiguity and nonlinear interaction. The proposition that interaction should pursue outcomes other than pure functionalism has been taken up by a number of theorists: Redstrom, Overbeek, Durisch, Hasenzahl. Gabor et al. Argue that ambiguity, normally considered anathema in human-computer interaction, should be utilized as a design resource to create greater levels of engagement. Rather than passive, scripted interaction, ambiguity opens up opportunity for interpretation, and through active interpretation, personal investment and connection. When strategically deployed, ambiguity can evade our frustration to instead be interpreted as intriguing, mysterious, and delightful. By contrast, efficiency requires an optimized fit between object and user, and this is facilitated most easily through standardization and a reduction of variability. For efficient interaction to take place, users must be uniform in their actions and experiences, interpretations, and reactions. Our tools handle us as much as we handle them. They frame our relationship to the world and establish systems of values and practices of behavior. Emphasizing usability has resulted in an instrumentalist approach to how we interact with both hard and soft devices, and this efficiency and task orientation risks establishing a philosophy of life that dominates the way we move through the world. This elevation of convenience throughout the 20th century has seen us internalize Taylor's systematizing logic of efficiency. With their emphasis on optimization, technological artifacts engineer human experience for peak functionality, and too frequently reduce the complex, variegated quality of experience into clearly defined sequential and goal-oriented tasks. Much of the analysis of interaction that's emerged from the field of HCI has tended to critique its overemphasis on ease of use as a design goal. Instead, it is argued, interfaces should be surprising, seductive, smart, rewarding, tempting, even moody, and thereby exhilarating to use. Dunn, writing from the perspective of critical design, has offered a more radical and ambitious rethinking of the role of designed objects. Rather than just pursuing alternative forms of user satisfaction, his project is relocating the electronic product beyond a culture of relentless innovation for its own sake, based simply on what is technologically possible and semi-logically consumable, to a broader context of critical thinking about its aesthetic role in everyday life. Rather than simply rethinking the ways that objects can serve the needs of the market in more engaging and satisfying ways, Dunn's project is in part to reframe objects not as useful, but as propositional. The above critiques of usability-oriented approaches to interaction argue for a broadening of its ambitions. While undoubtedly profitable, such analyses still frame interaction as purposive, privileging the outcomes of interactions to either provide richer and effective engagements or a broader understanding of the cultural and critical value of design. Put another way, both take as their primary concern the objects of consciousness, what is held in the mind. In contrast, this paper argues that designers should also consider the quality of conscious awareness that interactions produce, that is, the experience of mind that happens when interacting with designed artifacts. As has been made clear in Designing for Convenience, this has often come to mean designing interactions that are unconscious or thoughtless. As James beautifully articulated in the quote that opened this video, experience emerges through attending. Yet the culture of convenience that drives much contemporary design works against the sustainment of attention, either through unconscious and habitual interaction or encouraging what Lindstone has termed as continual partial attention. This should be a crucial issue for those concerned with designing for experience. If we accept Dewey's previously cited description of experience as an active and alert commerce with the world, we see that this is incompatible with artifacts that orchestrate passivity. Dewey's non-dualistic dissolving of boundaries between the self and world sound a lot like Csikszentmihalyi's flow, the state of complete absorption in a task. And it needs to be acknowledged that this kind of immersion is often the intention when designing tools to be more usable. However, I would argue that the focused attention and merging of action and awareness that characterize flow are qualitatively different from the kind of distracted and thoughtless interaction afforded by many of the physical and virtual objects that populate our lives. Convenient designs work to reduce cognitive load by automatizing decision-making. While this provides ease, it also disaffords conscious choice. The results being we often find ourselves directed along paths we may not otherwise have followed. Netflix and YouTube's embedding of autoplay are but one example that point to a larger tendency. Algorithms ease us along a predetermined path, first seducing us to keep watching, then choosing for us what it is we watch. At its most pernicious, ceding consumption choices to software manifests in the filter bubble effect and the kinds of political manipulation seen in Russia's interference in the 2016 US elections and the work of Cambridge Analytica. But automatizing choice undermines the idea of abundance that underpins the democratizing rhetoric of the internet, leading us into cognitive swim lanes, where convenience corrals our free will into tightly structured patterns of action and consumption. As technology becomes increasingly central to the orchestration of contemporary life, the qualities of technology come to be the qualities of the social and the cultural. Activities that were once conscious, complex and variegated, face-to-face conversation, preparing and sharing meals, maintaining relationships, being in the world in all its infinite complexity and variety, are increasingly captured by technological systems and efficiently streamlined into tasks whose purpose can sometimes seem little more than their own performance. To scroll through Instagram or numerous other forms of social media is to engage in a purpose that can at times seem to have no end other than its own reproduction. Susan Grenfell, a professor of synaptic pharmacology at Oxford University, put it this way: "What concerns me is that the current technologies have been converted from being means to being ends. Instead of complementing or supplementing or enriching life in 3 dimensions, the internet seems to have become an end in and of itself." Or, to quote again from Evan Williams, co-founder of Twitter, "Convenience is all destination and no journey." To understand and question the implications of this transference of convenience from the work of physical to mental effort requires an examination of how experience unfolds in the mind. It is worth stating that mind is more than the thoughts passing through it. Humans are, after all, Homo sapiens sapiens, the species that is aware that it is aware, and this capacity for meta-awareness is surely one of the core characteristics that distinguishes what it means to be human. While Western psychological examination has tended to focus on the content of consciousness, on the meanings and origins of particular thoughts, Buddhist philosophy and practice takes as its primary concern the nature of mind. Buddhist ontology considers consciousness itself as the primary source of introspective investigation, and in general as the source of all phenomena. As such, Buddhism has developed a rich repertoire of practices for the observing of mental processes. Key among these is mindfulness. The last 2 decades have seen an explosion of interest in mindfulness within clinical settings, to the degree that it is now one of the dominant modalities used in psychological practice. The New Statesman, declaring 2014 the year of mindfulness, captured a broader social trend that has seen it move from the ashram to boardroom. Growing out of Buddhist meditation practices, mindfulness's popularization in the West is in large part due to the work of Jon Kabat-Zinn and the mindfulness stress reduction program he developed at the UNC School of Medicine. Kabat-Zinn defines mindfulness as a non-elaborative, non-judgmental, present-centered awareness in which each thought, feeling, or sensation that arises in the attentional field is acknowledged and accepted as it is. It is outside the scope of this paper to survey the literature on mindfulness's efficacy, but hundreds of peer-reviewed articles testify to its benefits to mental health and its impacts on mood, emotional regulation, and the neurological structure of the brain. To understand the negative connection between mindfulness and the distracted and unconscious quality of mind afforded by convenience, it's worth unpacking how mind unfolds. William James coined the metaphor stream of consciousness to describe the way thoughts sequentially advance through the mind. Despite our interior sense of our awareness moving smoothly through time, in James's reckoning, this stream is in actuality a rapid, discontinuous progression of single mental events. Thoughts arise and are displaced in quick succession, often without our conscious awareness. This explanation of how experience unfolds bears strong similarities to that of Buddhism's. In their paper, Mechanisms of Mindfulness, Grabovak et al. Outline a Buddhist psychological model of how the mind proceeds, so as to elucidate the actions underlying mindfulness-based interventions. The following is a summary of their description. An object enters our awareness when it either stimulates our sensory organs or arises in the mind as an object of cognition, a thought, a memory, or an emotion. This awareness is transient. Mirroring James's stream of consciousness, As multiple things cannot be held in awareness simultaneously, consciousness unfolds through the rapid appearance and cessation of these mental events. As each mental event arises, it is accompanied by a feeling tone, or vedana. Vedana does not signify emotion, which appears to be a complex phenomena involving a variety of concomitant mental factors, but the bare affective quality of an experience, which may be either pleasant, painful, or neutral. Buddhism maintains that an essential human character trait is the desire to recoil from negative feelings and move towards positive ones, termed aversion and attachment respectively. As mental events arise in awareness, we habitually react to their associated feeling tone through this attachment or aversion. These habitual reactions rapidly produce further mental events, which in turn have an associated feeling tone, generating further attachment or aversion. In this way, an initial mental event and affective response can produce a cascade of mental elaboration that may have little or no bearing on the initial impetus or for the chain of thought. In this way, mental events may proliferate through the mind in a habitual and uncontrolled manner, creating incessant and unfocused mental chatter, or what in Buddhism is referred to as monkey mind. Mindfulness practices aim to dampen this disordered progression by bringing awareness to thoughts as they unfold and patiently and non-judgmentally refocusing the attention. In contrast, a state of unconscious mental action, mindless interaction, is precisely what convenience strives to produce. Designing artifacts around usability principles of efficiency and ease explicitly work against mindful and engaged experiencing. In his study of more than a dozen Eastern and Western contemplative practices, Goleman reported that the need for the meditator to retrain his attention, whether through concentration or mindfulness, is the single invariant ingredient in the recipe of altering consciousness in every meditation system. Nearly a century earlier, James argued that the faculty of voluntarily bringing back wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will. No one is compos sui if he have it not. In their science-published paper, A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind, Harvard researchers Killingsworth and Gilbert document their research investigating whether such philosophical and religious traditions have any verifiable basis. The study was the first large-scale study of happiness in daily life. It found that what people were thinking was a better predictor of their happiness than what they were doing, and concludes with the powerful assertion that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. The ability to think about what is not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes at an emotional cost. And so this paper asserts that experience design must broaden its concerns to encompass not just the outcomes of designed interactions, but the quality of mind that designed interactions afford. Thank you.